It was a Wednesday morning in late March when I found out I wasn't invited to my grandson Noah's 5th birthday party. Not through a call, not even a damn text, but a Facebook post. Scrolling half distracted with my morning coffee, there it was, a picture of a balloon arch, a Spider-Man cake, and my daughter Melissa standing next to her husband Darren, all smiles, arms wrapped around my 2 grandsons, Noah and the baby, Caleb. The caption said, "Thanks to everyone who made Noah's special day so amazing. We're so lucky to be surrounded by love." My first thought wasn't even anger. It was confusion, like I'd read it wrong. I stared at it for a solid minute, waiting for my brain to catch up. I refreshed the page. Nothing changed. I opened my messages, scrolled up through my text from Melissa. Last one was a week ago, just asking if I had the boys' old crib still in storage. No mention of a party. No invite. No heads up. I just sat there, phone in hand, heart dropping somewhere behind my ribs. That cold feeling crawled in, the one that tells you this isn't a misunderstanding. This is intentional. And the worst part? I already knew why. It goes back 6 months. Melissa had come over one Sunday evening, said she needed to talk. She and Darren were trying to move to a better school district, somewhere the kids could have a yard, maybe even a pool. They'd found a place, new build, gated community, 3-car garage, $500,000. She sat there across from me, eyes bright but nervous, and said it plain. "Dad, we need your help." They didn't want a loan. They wanted a gift. "You're in a good place financially," she said. "You've been sitting on that investment account since Mom died. You always said it was for the family. Well, this is for your family. For your grandkids." I didn't say yes. I didn't say no either. I just told her I'd think about it. And I did. For 2 weeks. I ran the numbers, talked to my accountant, even drove out to see the neighborhood. It was nice, sure, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't about the kids. It was about showing off. About being the family with the fancy address. And truth be told, it felt like she was trying to leverage the fact that I love those boys more than anything. So I said no. Not because I didn't want to help, but because it felt wrong. Because it wasn't a necessity, it was a trophy. I offered to help with private school tuition instead, or a down payment on a smaller place. Melissa didn't take it well. She said I was being selfish, that I didn't care about their future. That Mom would have said yes. That stung. We didn't talk for a while after that. Just the bare minimum. Drop-offs, pickups, birthday gifts mailed, not handed. I figured we'd move past it. Families fight, it happens. But now I was staring at this post, at a party I didn't even know was happening, and I realized she wasn't over it. Not even close. I put the phone down and stood up too fast. My knee popped like it always does, and I winced, but it barely registered. My hands were shaking, not with rage, but with something worse, hurt. A kind of hollow hurt that makes your chest feel like it's collapsing in. I paced the kitchen, sat down, stood up again. I thought about calling her, but what would I say? That she broke my heart? That she used my grandkids as leverage, and now I was the one paying the price? I stared out the window, at the quiet street, the neighbor's dog taking a crap on my lawn again. Life just kept going. I didn't go to work that day. I own a small hardware store downtown. Nothing fancy, just enough to keep me busy. I called in and said I wasn't feeling well. That part was true. I spent most of the day walking circles in the house, remembering birthday parties past. The one where Noah turned 2 and I dressed up like a dinosaur because he was obsessed with them. The cake ended up on the ceiling somehow. The first time he called me Papa. And now this. By nightfall, I did something I rarely do. I poured myself a whiskey. Not a glass, just straight from the bottle into one of those thick-bottomed tumblers. Sat on the back porch. Let the cold bite into my skin. The sky was black and empty. No stars. That's when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I waited a second, thinking maybe it was a delivery driver or a mistake. Then it rang again. I stood, a little unsteady, and walked to the front. It was Darren, of all people. He stood there in a button-up and jeans like he just got back from the damn party. Jacket folded over one arm. Smile half-formed, eyes cautious. "Can we talk?" he asked. I stared at him for a long moment, then stepped aside. "Come in." He walked in slow, like he didn't want to spook me. Sat at the kitchen table while I poured another drink. "I told her not to do it like this," he said finally. "I told her you should be there. That it wasn't right." I didn't say anything. He looked at his hands. "She's angry, Frank. She thinks you don't believe in her. In us. It's not about belief. It's about what's right." Yeah, he said, but she doesn't see it that way. She sees it like you're punishing her for asking. I laughed once, bitter. She's punishing me. He nodded slowly. I know, and I'm sorry. I wanted you to know I didn't agree with it. That should have meant something, but it didn't. Not really, because at the end of the day, he still stood next to her in that picture. He still smiled for the camera. Thanks, I said, not meaning it. He got the hint. He stood up. If it were up to me, you'd have been there. It's not up to you. He nodded again and left. The silence afterward was deafening. Later that night, I opened an old box from the attic. Photos of Melissa as a kid, drawings she made in first grade, letters from summer camp. A little paper crown from her 6th birthday. I don't even know why I kept it all. Maybe I thought one day she'd want to see it. Now I wasn't sure. I stayed up until sunrise. And when the light finally broke through the blinds, I knew something had shifted. Not just between me and Melissa, but inside me. Some quiet line had been crossed. This wasn't just about money, or real estate, or a missed party. This was something deeper. And I had a feeling it was only the beginning. The next morning, I walked into the hardware store a little after 9. My manager, Vince, gave me a once-over and whistled. Rough night, he asked. I just grunted. Didn't want to talk. The store felt smaller somehow, like the walls had crept in overnight. Every familiar corner, every stocked shelf, it all felt pointless. This place used to give me something to hold on to. Now it just reminded me how quiet things had gotten. At lunch, I sat in my office with the door closed and reread the Facebook post again. The longer I stared, the more my hands clenched. It wasn't even the party. It was the comments. All the friends and in-laws posting things like such a beautiful family, and the boys are so lucky to have you too. Melissa replied to each one with hearts and thank yous, like she was painting this perfect picture of a life that didn't include me. That's when I did something I shouldn't have. I left a comment. Just one line. Glad he had a good birthday. No punctuation. No smiley face. Just that. Within minutes, Melissa deleted it. Then she blocked me. That's when the real hurt hit. I don't cry easy. Not since my wife, Helen, passed. But I felt it coming. Thick in my throat, heavy in my chest. I closed the office door, turned off the light, and sat in the dark for a long time. Maybe an hour. Maybe 2. After work, I drove around without a destination. Just needed to move. I ended up in front of Melissa's house. Didn't even think about it. I just pulled up and parked across the street. Their car was in the driveway. Lights on inside. I could see silhouettes moving through the front window. Laughter. Something on the TV. My grandsons, behind that glass, just out of reach. I didn't get out. Just watched for a while. Then I turned the engine over and drove home. That night, I wrote a letter. Not an email, not a text. A real letter. I poured everything into it. Told her I was hurt. Told her I missed the boys. Told her I didn't give her the money because I loved her, not because I didn't. I folded it up, put it in an envelope, and left it on her porch the next morning before sunrise. No response. Not that day, not the next. But something strange happened a few days later. I got a call from an unknown number. Usually I let those go to voicemail, but something made me pick up. Mr. Turner, a woman's voice said. This is Natalie. I work with Child Protective Services. I froze. She continued. I know this is unexpected, but your name came up during a routine background check. Are you available to talk? My heart skipped. Is something wrong? There was a pause. Then she said, maybe. It's about your daughter. And your grandchildren. Right then, I knew this went deeper than I ever imagined. I met Natalie at a coffee shop not far from my store. She was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, sharp eyes behind round glasses, hair tied back in a tight bun. She shook my hand firmly, introduced herself again, and got right to the point. Mr. Turner, your daughter's name came up during an anonymous tip we received. We're obligated to follow up on any claims made involving minor children. I can't share the details of the report, but I need to ask you a few questions about the household. I sat there, stunned. An anonymous tip? What kind of tip? She gave me a polite but firm look. I can't say. But have you observed anything concerning about your daughter or her husband's behavior around the children? Any signs of neglect or aggression? I wanted to laugh, or maybe yell. They're not abusers, I said. They're proud, stubborn, and they've iced me out, but they love those boys. I've never seen anything to suggest otherwise. She scribbled something in her notepad. When's the last time you were in the home? I hesitated. 6, maybe 7 weeks ago. Things have been tense. Natalie nodded slowly. Would you be willing to speak further if we have additional questions? Yes. Anything for those boys. She handed me her card and stood up. I appreciate your time, Mr. Turner. If you hear or see anything concerning, please don't hesitate to contact me. As she walked away, a strange weight settled on my chest. There was a kernel of doubt buried under the surface. I didn't think Melissa would ever harm her children, but I'd seen things crack under pressure before. Money stress, relationship problems, secrets that rot under the floorboards. That night, I drove past their house again. I told myself it was just to reassure myself, make sure the boys were okay. The curtains were drawn, but I saw shadows in the kitchen. Nothing alarming, just a family going about their evening. 2 days later, Melissa called me. First time in weeks. You sent someone to spy on us. Her voice was a knife. What? No, Melissa, what are you talking about? CPS showed up asking questions. You're the only one who'd do something like that. I stood up from the couch, adrenaline kicking in. I didn't call anyone. They reached out to me, said they got an anonymous tip. I met with them because I was worried. You're lying, she said, quieter now, more venom than volume. You're trying to control us because we wouldn't beg for your money. You shut me out. I barked. You used the boys to punish me. I didn't report you, Melissa. I'd never do that. A pause, just the sound of her breathing. Then she hung up. The next week was hell. Vince noticed I was off at work, kept asking if everything was all right. I just kept my head down, said I was dealing with family stuff, which was true. I barely slept. Every day I checked my phone, hoping for a message, anything to show she believed me. Nothing came. Then Darren called. I believe you, he said. No greeting. Just that. I sank into a kitchen chair. She doesn't. No. She's convinced this is your way of getting back at her. She's hurt, and she's digging in. I don't care how hurt she is. You don't block your kid's grandfather out of their lives over a house. Over money. I know. Darren sighed. But there's more. She's not herself lately. Snapping at the kids. Drinking more. Spending money like it grows on trees. That made me sit up straighter. What do you mean, drinking? Wine mostly. Every night. Couple glasses, sometimes more. Says it helps her sleep. I felt that weight again. The kind that tells you something's slipping. And the boys. They're okay. I think. But I'm not home as much lately. Working long hours. And when I get back, she's either cold or picking fights. I don't know what to do anymore. You need help, I said. Real help. Counseling. Maybe talk to someone about the drinking. He didn't say anything for a while. Then, she won't go. Says I'm the one with the problem. After we hung up, I stared at the ceiling for a long time. The picture I had of Melissa, my Melissa, was starting to warp. I'd always seen her as strong, willful, maybe a little too proud. But now she was slipping, and taking the boys with her. That weekend, I drove out to the old lake cabin Helen and I used to visit. Just needed to get out of town, clear my head. I brought an old photo album, the kind with sticky pages and plastic covers. I flipped through it for hours. Melissa's 8th birthday, that trip to Yellowstone, the year she graduated college. Helen smiling in every other frame. The way she used to put her hand on my shoulder whenever Melissa acted out, grounding me. That night, I got a voicemail from Natalie. Mr. Turner, we've followed up on the report, and while there's no immediate threat to the children, we'll be keeping the case open for the next few months. I'll keep you informed if anything changes. I sat on the porch, cold beer sweating in my hand, and watched the moon rise over the lake. It was quiet, peaceful, but inside, everything was unraveling. And I knew it was going to get worse before it got better. I didn't go back home right away after that weekend. I stayed 2 extra nights at the cabin, calling in sick, letting Vince handle the store. He didn't ask questions. He knew better. Truth is, I didn't want to go back. Not because of the mess with Melissa, but because I felt powerless. And I'm not used to that. I'm used to fixing things. Pipes, locks, broken fences, broken hearts. But this was different. This was my daughter breaking in a way I couldn't patch up with a tool set. The night I came home, my phone buzzed right as I was unlocking my front door. It was Darren again. His voice was lower this time, more tired. She took the boys to her sister's, he said. Didn't say when she'd be back. Is everything all right? He sighed. No. She found my laptop open. I'd been searching rehab options. She freaked out. Accused me of spying on her, trying to control her. Said she was taking the boys somewhere safe. My grip tightened on the phone. Safe from what? From me. From you. From anyone who doesn't agree with her. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan, listening to the creaks in the house, thinking about Melissa as a little girl, climbing into bed next to me after a nightmare. She'd wrap her arms around my neck and whisper, "Don't let the monsters get me." Now she was the one hiding, and I didn't know from what. A week passed. Then two. No contact. Darren said she blocked him too, only answered through short texts from a burner phone, never saying where she was. I started to think she might have left the state. Then, one morning, I walked into the store and found an envelope taped to the front door. No stamp, just my name written in her handwriting. Inside was a single photo, Noah and Caleb sitting on a motel bed, cartoon playing on the screen behind them. Both boys smiling, but something in their eyes looked tired. Worn. No note. No explanation. I called Darren. "She's in town," I said. "I think she wants me to know, but not you." He sounded hollow. "I'm starting to think she doesn't want anyone anymore." That afternoon, I drove through every cheap motel in a 30-mile radius, showing the photo, asking clerks if they'd seen a woman with two boys, maybe paid in cash. Most said no. A few might have lied. One older woman at a rundown place off the highway squinted at the picture. "Yeah," she said. "They were here. Checked out 2 days ago." My heart sank. "Where'd they go?" She shrugged. "Didn't say. Left in a rush, though?" She looked stressed. The next day, I got a call from Natalie. "Mr. Turner, we received a second anonymous tip. We're escalating the case." I leaned on the kitchen counter. "What does that mean?" "It means we're trying to locate the children immediately. If the mother is hiding them, that's grounds for emergency intervention." "Do you need my help?" She hesitated. "Off the record, yes. Anything you can find out could be vital." That night, I pulled out my old safe from the closet. Inside were two things, my wife's wedding band and a thumb drive I hadn't looked at in years. It had everything: family photos, copies of emails, even old audio recordings Helen used to make for a personal journal. I plugged it into my laptop and scrolled through years of memories. Then I found something I'd forgotten, an old video from Melissa's college years. She was drunk, laughing, sitting in some dark dorm room, talking to the camera like it was a friend. "Sometimes I think I'm just pretending to be okay," she said in the video. "Like, everyone thinks I'm this together person. But inside, it's like I'm this alien wearing a Melissa suit. And if they ever found out who I really was, they'd all run." I watched it twice. Then I called Natalie. "I think I know what's going on," I said. "It's not just stress. It's something deeper." She listened as I explained. Her voice was gentle by the end. "Thank you, Mr. Turner. That helps more than you know." The next day, she called again. "We found them," she said. "She's at a pay-by-the-week place near Milltown. We've initiated a wellness check. I thought you'd want to know." I was already grabbing my keys. When I got there, 2 social workers and a police officer were outside the room. Melissa sat on the edge of the bed, arms wrapped around Noah, while Caleb cried in the corner. Her hair was tangled, eyes red. She looked at me like a stranger. "I didn't hurt them," she said as I walked in. "I didn't." "I know," I said quietly. "But you scared them. And me." The officer pulled me aside. "She's not under arrest, but she's being placed under a psychiatric hold for 72 hours. The kids will go to the father." Melissa didn't fight it, just nodded, eyes glassy. As they led her away, she looked back at me. "I didn't mean for it to go this way." "Neither did I." Outside, Darren held the boys. I walked up slowly. Caleb clung to him. Noah looked at me. "Papa," he whispered. I dropped to my knees and pulled him in. That night, I sat in the driveway for a long time, engine off, watching the stars. Everything had changed. Again, after they took Melissa to the hospital, the boys came to stay with me for a while. Darren needed time to adjust, figure things out, and the social worker agreed that a familiar, stable environment would be best. My house wasn't exactly kid-proof anymore, but I made it work. I cleared out the guest room, put fresh sheets on the bed, hauled out old toys from the attic. The same toys I once tucked away thinking I might never need them again. Noah asked about his mom constantly. Caleb mostly clung to me, always needing to be touched, his tiny hand wrapped around my thumb or nestled against my chest. I told them their mom was getting rest, that she was safe. But even at 5, Noah wasn't dumb. One night, he looked up at me and asked, "Did she break?" I paused for a second too long, then said, No, buddy. She's just tired. Grown-ups get tired sometimes in a way that's hard to fix. He nodded like he understood, but I knew it was the kind of understanding kids fake to stay in the room. A few days later, Darren came over with groceries and paperwork. We sat at the kitchen table going over legal documents, temporary custody, medical releases, all the things you never imagined needing for your own child. She's been diagnosed with major depressive disorder with psychotic features, he said. They think it's been building for a while. Stress, pressure, unresolved grief. She never dealt with your wife's death, Frank, or the miscarriage she had 2 years ago, or the fact she's been drowning in expectations ever since. I didn't know about the miscarriage. That hit me hard. She didn't want to tell anyone, Darren added. Said she didn't want to be seen as weak. We sat in silence for a long while. Finally, I said, I failed her somewhere. No, he said firmly. You didn't. We all carry our own shadows, Frank. Melissa just never let anyone help carry hers. That night, after the kids went to bed, I went back to that thumb drive. I listened to another one of Helen's old recordings. In it, she talked about Melissa. She's got your fire, Frank, but none of your faith. I worry sometimes that she'll burn herself down to keep others warm. That line stayed with me. The next day, I got another unexpected visitor. Natalie. She wasn't in work clothes this time. Just jeans and a gray sweater. She looked tired. I shouldn't be here officially, she said, but I wanted to talk. We sat in the living room. The boys were down for a nap. She told me they were closing the case soon. Melissa was stable, compliant, making progress. I've seen a lot of families fall apart, she said. But this one, I think it can be saved, if you're willing to fight for it. I'm not giving up, I said. She looked at me for a long second. There's something else. Something I haven't told you. I waited. When Melissa was younger, before college, she came to CPS. Made a statement. Said she thought someone was watching her. Following her. She said it started after your wife's funeral. We did an investigation, but there was no evidence of a threat. Eventually, she stopped returning calls. That caught me off guard. She never said a word. She was 17, Natalie said. Said she thought her house was bugged. That people were trying to get into her head. The psychiatrist chalked it up to grief-induced paranoia. But now, seeing the patterns. What do you think? I asked. I think it never stopped. A long pause stretched between us. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a copy of a report filed 3 months ago. Melissa had called a national hotline, one for government mind control victims. She never stopped believing something was after her, Natalie said. She just got better at hiding it. I stared at the paper. Read it twice. Every line cut deeper than the last. Later that night, I went into Melissa's old bedroom. It had been years since anyone stayed there. I pulled open drawers, checked the closet, flipped through the books on the shelves. One notebook caught my eye, black cover, no label. Inside were drawings. Pages and pages of odd symbols, spirals, repeated phrases. They see me through the mirrors. Voices come when the house is quiet. Don't trust the reflections. My skin prickled. Then, near the back, I found a name written over and over again. Ophanim. I googled it. Turns out, Ophanim is a biblical reference. One of the angelic orders. Wheels within wheels, full of eyes. Watchers. And that's when something clicked. This wasn't just depression. Melissa had been battling something her whole life. Something she thought was real. Maybe to her it was. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't all in her head. The morning after I found Melissa's notebook, I sat at the kitchen table, the sun still low and spilling across the counter, bathing the room in that soft, orange quiet you only get right before the world fully wakes up. The kids were still asleep, and the house, for once, didn't creak or groan or murmur. I had that notebook open in front of me, a pot of black coffee growing cold beside it, my hands turning the pages slowly, trying to absorb what the hell I was looking at. It wasn't just ramblings. There was structure, patterns, whole sections written in tight, methodical cursive, words looped and clean, like she was documenting something real, something consistent. Symbols drawn with precision. Pages that repeated phrases like, they enter through sleep, or the silence is not empty. It made my skin crawl, not because I believed in it, but because she did, deeply, and somehow, she'd kept it all hidden for years. From me, from Darren, from everyone. That kind of secrecy takes work. Painful, lonely work. After I dropped the boys off with Darren for the day, I drove out to the old community library. Not the big one in town, but the small one over in Harlan, tucked between a post office and a bait shop. It had dusty shelves, a creaky floor, and a librarian named Ruth who looked like she'd been working there since Eisenhower. I asked about books on biblical angels, and after a suspicious glance, she led me to a back corner. I sat cross-legged on the floor, thumbing through volumes with gold leaf edges and cracked spines. Often came up again, wheels within wheels. Descriptions that made me think of machinery wrapped in eyes. Watchers from beyond. Not metaphorical ones either. Actual descriptions of celestial beings who observe and record but do not interfere. At least, not directly. It sounded ridiculous. Until I thought about Melissa's drawings. The spirals. The way she avoided mirrors, even as a teenager. I remembered how she used to cover the bathroom mirror with a towel during storms. I thought it was superstition. Turns out it was fear. I took a few notes, checked out 2 books, and headed home. That night, I stayed up late after the kids went to sleep, digging deeper online. Forums, conspiracy threads, old PDFs hosted on websites with domain names that sounded like nonsense. I fell into a rabbit hole of watcher theories, all spinning around this idea that some people, not everyone, just a few, get marked, watched, chosen. Melissa's name came up on one of those forums. Not directly, but there were posts that sounded like her. Mentions of M from the Midwest, describing wheel-shaped hallucinations, audio distortions, waking paralysis. And these weren't years old either. The posts were from 3 months ago. I clicked on the username, traced it to a trail of comments. One in particular stopped me cold. It said, "They're watching my children now." I should have ended it before it got this far. I closed the laptop, sat in the dark. I could still hear the hum of the monitor behind me like it was whispering something I couldn't quite make out. This wasn't just some psychotic break. This was a belief system she'd lived with. One she was starting to pass down. The next morning, I called Natalie, told her everything. She didn't scoff, didn't tell me I was crazy. She just said, "I've heard this before. Not often, but once or twice in my career. Usually from veterans. Sometimes from schizophrenic patients. But the overlap is always the same. A sense that they're being recorded, watched, like their lives are performance art for something else." "That's exactly it," I said. "And she's afraid she passed it to the kids." "Do you believe she did?" I hesitated, then said, "I don't know." We met again at a diner, quiet booth in the back. She brought files, medical notes, case summaries. One from when Melissa was 19, admitted briefly for sleep paralysis episodes and auditory hallucinations. Somehow, that never made it to me. She'd checked herself out before they could file anything formal, and no one ever followed up. Natalie flipped open a thin folder and said, "There's something else." During her evaluation last week, she asked for a priest. Not a psychologist. A priest. She said she needed a binding. A what? Something to seal the house. Or her mind. She wasn't clear. Just kept repeating before it opens again. I sat back. Let that sink in. Later that week, Melissa was discharged under supervision. She came home to my place, just for a few days, until she could transition to a recovery center. She was quieter than I'd ever seen her. Not sullen, not medicated, just still. As if the storm had passed, but the damage was being counted silently. One night, I found her sitting in the backyard, wrapped in one of Helen's old quilts, staring up at the sky. I sat beside her. She didn't look at me. "I know you found the notebook," she said. I didn't lie. "Yeah." I thought if I wrote it all down, maybe it would go away. It never did. She shook her head. It just got better at hiding. We sat there a long time. Then she said, "Do you ever feel like someone's rewinding your life? Watching it over and over again?" "No," I said honestly. "But I felt like I failed you." She looked at me then. Really looked. "You didn't fail me, Dad. You just didn't know the script I was reading from." I didn't have anything to say to that. After she went to bed, I stayed out there. Watched the stars. One of them blinked. Twice. Then stopped. Probably nothing. But I didn't blink back. The first real confrontation didn't start with yelling or slammed doors. It started with breakfast. 3 mornings after Melissa had moved back in, we were sitting at the table. Her, me, the boys, everyone quiet. The kind of fragile quiet you get when people are trying too hard not to wake a sleeping fear. Noah asked for more syrup, and when I passed him the bottle, he looked at his mom and said, "Are the watchers gone now?" Melissa froze. her fork hovering halfway to her mouth, and for a moment I saw it. That flicker of terror in her eyes, like someone just flipped a switch in her head. She didn't answer right away, just stared. I stepped in, tried to lighten the mood, said something like, "Buddy, your mom is just tired. Let's not talk about monsters at the table." But it was too late. Caleb looked up too, suddenly wide-eyed, and Melissa set her fork down so gently it was like she didn't want the metal to make a sound. "They're not monsters," she said quietly. I still locked on the boys. "They just see too much." I stood up then, clearing plates I didn't need to clear, trying to shift the mood, but I knew we were past that. After the kids went outside to play, I sat down across from her. She was staring out the window, watching them in the yard, fingers tapping rhythmically on the table. I didn't speak, just waited. After a while, she said, "They've started watching them now." I saw it in Noah's eyes. "He's marked." "No," I said, firm but careful. "He's a kid. He's scared because he sees you scared." "You still don't get it," she whispered. I wanted to yell, "Shake her." Instead, I said, "Help me understand then. Show me what you mean." That night, after the boys were in bed, she brought out a shoebox. Inside were dozens of folded papers, small sketches, and tiny strips of audio tape. She plugged a dusty recorder into the wall and pressed play. What came out was garbled static, crackles, then a faint sound, almost like a whisper under the noise. "Do you hear that?" she asked. I did, but I also knew how minds could play tricks. I worked construction when I was younger. I'd stare at drywall so long I'd swear I saw it breathe. I told her it sounded like interference. "No," she said, "it's them. They talk through the empty." The next day, Darren showed up. He wanted to take the boys out for ice cream, give Melissa a break. She refused, flat out. Said the boys weren't safe away from the house. Said they would use the separation to imprint on them. I pulled Darren aside and told him to take the boys anyway. He did. Melissa locked herself in her room for hours afterward. I heard her chanting something, over and over. That night, I sat in the living room with a glass of scotch and a stack of the pages from the shoebox. I didn't believe in watchers or imprints or ancient beings, but I did believe in grief. I believed in trauma, and I knew that if Melissa didn't get help soon, we'd lose her again. Maybe for good this time. So I made a decision. A harsh one. The next morning, I told her she needed to check into a long-term care center. A place with real doctors. She said no. Said she was fine now. That the watchers were weakening. That the rituals were working. I told her that wasn't up for debate. She lashed out. Threw a mug at the wall. Screamed. Said I was trying to erase her. Just like Mom did. That line stopped me. "What do you mean?" I asked. She looked stunned, like she didn't mean to say it. Then she turned away, sat on the floor, knees to her chest. "Mom knew," she whispered. "She knew what I saw, what I heard, and she told me to keep quiet. Said if I talked about it, they'd come for her instead. So I stopped. I stopped to protect her." I sank into the couch, my heart thudding. That didn't sound like Helen. Not the Helen I knew. But the thing is, you never really know what someone says in the quiet spaces, in the moments you're not around. Over the next few days, things unraveled faster. Melissa started drawing on the walls. Circles, eyes, repeating symbols. She barely slept. Claimed if she did, they'd get stronger. I called Natalie, told her I needed help. She came over that afternoon, brought a doctor. Melissa refused to speak to them. Hid in the bathroom. Screamed through the door. Said she'd rather die than go back to a hospital. The doctor said we'd need a court order. I spent that night sitting in her old room, flipping through her notebook again. There was a passage near the end that chilled me. "They're not watching me anymore. They're watching him. I gave them what they wanted. The door is open now." I didn't sleep. The next morning, Noah didn't come down for breakfast. I found him in the closet, curled up, whispering to himself. He said he heard something in the mirror the night before. That was it. That was my line. I filed the petition. Got the order. Melissa fought. Screamed. Begged. But they took her. I stood there on the porch as they loaded her into the van. She looked at me like I'd killed her. "I trusted you," she said. "You gave him the key." And then she was gone. The boy stayed with me. Darren helped, but he was wrecked. One night, I found him crying in the garage. Said he didn't know how to talk to Noah anymore. Said sometimes when he looked at him, he saw Melissa. Weeks passed. Melissa didn't get better. She got worse. The doctors said she was slipping into a deeper state, believing more and more that she was a vessel, that her children were inheritors of something ancient. One night, I was putting Noah to bed. He looked at me and said, "Papa, the eyes are back." I asked him what he meant. He pointed to the mirror. I covered it, just in case. The first morning after Melissa was gone, Noah asked if she'd be home in time to make pancakes. I told him she needed to rest for a while, but I'd make them myself. He nodded, like that was a fair trade, and sat at the kitchen table tracing the grain of the wood with his finger while I flipped batter in a pan that suddenly felt too heavy. Caleb, younger and easier to distract, asked if we could go to the park. I said sure. Anything to keep them moving, laughing, unaware. But they weren't unaware. Not really. Children feel absence in ways we forget. How silence takes up space. How light changes when someone's no longer in the room. I'd seen it when Helen passed. I saw it now. That week was slow. The kind where the clocks tick louder and the house feels too big. Melissa's room stayed shut. I didn't open it. Not yet. Part of me wanted to burn everything inside. Part of me wanted to save it all, freeze it, preserve the last version of her that still belonged to us. Darren came by most evenings. We took turns putting the kids to bed, reading them the same stories over and over, like repeating them enough might keep something stable. Some nights, after the boys were asleep, we sat out back drinking cheap beer, talking about nothing. Or everything. He asked once if I thought Melissa was ever coming back. I didn't have an answer. I still don't. Then something strange started to happen. Not all at once, but in drips. The boys would mention things. Small things. Like hearing breathing when no one was in the room. Or that the TV would turn itself on in the middle of the night. At first, I brushed it off. Power surges. Dreams. Imagination. But then I started noticing things too. My tools moved. Lights flickered. The mirror in the hall cracked straight down the center. No impact. Just a thin, perfect split. And every now and then, I'd wake in the middle of the night with a feeling. Not fear, exactly. More like being observed. A presence that lingered just long enough to leave doubt in its wake. I didn't tell the boys. I didn't tell Darren. I told myself I was tired. That trauma made patterns where there weren't any. But I started sleeping with the hallway light on. Weeks passed. Melissa didn't improve. Her doctors said she'd grown quiet, detached. She no longer spoke about watchers or symbols. She barely spoke at all. Natalie told me they were considering long-term care, permanent. The kind that sounds like a life sentence even if no one says the words out loud. Then one night, she called me. Out of the blue. Her voice was different. Calm. Clear. "Dad," she said, "I need you to come. Just once. There's something I need to show you." I drove out the next morning. The hospital was gray, sterile, the kind of place where time sticks to the floor. Melissa sat in a chair by the window, dressed in a sweater 2 sizes too big. Her hair was longer. Her eyes clearer. "Did you bring the notebook?" she asked. I had. I didn't know why, but I had. She opened it to a blank page and began to draw. Slowly, carefully. Circles, eyes, arrows. Then she looked at me and said, "This is the key." It was never about them watching us. It was about what we showed them. I didn't understand. Not then. But I watched her draw for almost an hour. When she finished, she handed it to me and said, "Burn this. Not now, but when it starts again." I left with the notebook, tucked it in the glove box, told myself it was the last time I'd indulge this madness. But part of me knew better. At home, things started to settle. The boys laughed more. Caleb started sleeping through the night. Darren began dating someone, quietly, respectfully. He asked if I was okay with it. I said yes. Life was inching forward. I even reopened the hardware store. Vince was happy to have me back. The aisles smelled the same. The register still stuck on 7. Normalcy crept in, gentle and slow. Until one morning, Noah stood in the hallway staring at the cracked mirror. He didn't say a word, just stared. When I asked what he was doing, he said, "Listening." I threw the mirror out that afternoon. That night, I opened the notebook. The drawing she made, the key, looked different under the lamplight. Not physically, but something about the way it curved, the way the eyes seemed to shift, felt wrong. I closed it, locked it away. A week later, Natalie called. Melissa was gone. Not dead, just missing. Vanished from the hospital. No sign of forced entry. No cameras working that night. Just an empty bed and an open window that didn't open from the inside. The search lasted a month. Nothing. No sightings. No leads. Darren wanted to tell the boys she'd gone on a trip. I didn't correct him. That was 3 months ago. Now, the house is quiet. The boys are okay. Mostly. But sometimes, I see Noah tilt his head like he's listening to something I can't hear. Sometimes, Caleb stares at a blank wall like there's something behind it. And me? I haven't burned the notebook. Not yet. Some nights, I open it, flip to the drawing, and I swear, God help me, I swear those eyes are watching me. But most nights, I just sit on the back porch, glass in hand, stars above, wondering whether this all started with a missed birthday invitation or something much, much older. Whether this was ever about money or resentment, or whether Melissa was right all along. And if she was, what's coming for my grandsons next?